Kacee Edwards. I use Kacee Shavorn as my business name, which is just my first name and my middle name. I am based in Perth in Western Australia. I currently work as a life coach. I focus mainly on reconnecting people with their emotions in a healthier way. So a lot of people have sort of, through generational experiences, disconnected themselves from pretty much who they are as a human, mainly because and it's not at their fault, but generationally, I guess there was a time like even 70 years ago, we'll say, where people were sort of raised with the mentality of to show emotions as weak, or it's an illness. Like, for you to be sad and hysterically crying, they would say, oh no, it's hysteria, they've got to be committed, or they've got to go and see a doctor because there's something wrong with them. And anyway, that's sort of going down through generations, so passed from parent to parent to parent, and they didn't know any better at the time, so this isn't a blame game. Led to like my generation, and I'm an 80s baby, so it's led to my generation and the generations like after me to be severely disconnected from their internal state, so to speak, and not understand that the way that they feel and think and what they do in life is it's natural. Like, there's nothing wrong with them. They've just been taught that it's not right, when it's a completely human thing to do. The reason I think I got into that mainly was because I had probably, I would say, a less than desirable childhood. So I was raised as a ward of the state, which is I don't know what you guys call it there, but that's our equivalent of the foster care system. My birth mother was, or she is still, incredibly mentally unwell. So considering that I am an 80s baby, that gives you a sort of a time frame of what went on. And there was no mental health system back then. So she wasn't helped. She was just sort of palmed off as a troublemaker and a difficult human, and sort of she fell through the cracks, so to speak, because they didn't know enough about like brain chemistry and brain functions and mental health to be able to help her. So that then made her not as capable as she should have been as a parent to look after us. So that's where the foster care system came in. And that was from the age of about 6 months until I was 18. And that taught me very unhealthy boundaries when it came to emotional stability and my capability, or my emotional range, I suppose. So I'm not too sure the best way to describe it. I guess I became really good at controlling my thoughts and my feelings, my behaviors, to the point where I literally can switch it off. Like, I know it sounds really unhealthy, but I've actually spoken to quite a few people. It's actually not as unhealthy as it sounds. I can just detach completely from it. And now I obviously had to, as an adult and as a parent, reform a healthy connection with those emotions, because I've now got to mold a small little human into a healthy adult, so that she doesn't relive the cycle of, emotional baggage. So I'm basically trying to set the example of how it is to lead an emotionally healthy life. And that journey has also obviously led me to educating myself, so that now I can help other people. So I am a qualified life coach, a master practitioner in NLP and hypnotherapy. And I use all those skills along with my own life experience with clients. Seem to be dealing a lot more with trauma. So it comes up as like a lot of emotional baggage seems to be linked to trauma. And I think that just resonates with me from my own childhood experiences, like, sexual abuse and really unusual punishments and just neglect in its basic form, basically. And that's just sort of drawn these people to me, I suppose. And we're doing some great things together, reestablishing their connection with themselves and understanding that they're not broken or damaged and there is nothing wrong with them. And it's also teaching them that they do have the capability to set emotional boundaries, and it is okay for them to be human. You know what I mean? It's okay for them to have days where they're like, fuck this shit, and I want to cry, or want to sit on the couch, or I don't feel happy all the time. That's normal. It's natural. And it's a really important thing. for people to understand that it is a normal and natural occurrence. So I've had contact with her for most of my life. So I've got siblings, and it got to the stage, because I was backwards and forwards, like in and out of care, and then back to her, and then back. It was a big yo-yo experience. And then when I was 8, I actually said I'd had enough and asked to just be put into care full time, because I just had enough of the constant instability. I mean, either way, no matter which direction I went lifestyle wise, it would have been volatile. So, it was, fat and fry pan, it's the same thing. It's just a different heat level. And so we've always talked. I mean, we're relatively close. She's still incredibly unwell, so it's still quite a difficult relationship at times, but she tries and I try, and we're sort of trying to build a pathway forward, so to speak, with that. Again, it comes from a place, like, one of my big things is that, like, compassion and empathy, and I sort of try and coach people in the fact of leading with love. So I learnt, and this is something that I had been doing, and I didn't realize that this is what I'd been doing, but I'd read a book by Brene Brown, and she goes, she was teaching her daughter about living big, and that's setting boundaries, living with integrity, or living inside your integrity, and being generous. So using the most generous hypothesis for what is going on for that person to put them in the best light that you can. And that started obviously being directed at my mother, and then it went on to just other areas in life. Like, I ended up in a really shitty relationship, and I had to extend that to that partner significantly, because it just, I mean, when you're young, we all get in these situations, and it's just more life experience. So all these things and all these skills and all these traumas that I've had to heal from have just sort of built up a skill set that I'm able to pass on to people. And, I have all these people come and they say, oh, I'm so broken and I don't know what to do, and I just feel like my life's a failure. And we've just got to flip their perspective, basically. And I use these skills, and I use my life as an example of saying, I've had all this shitty stuff happen, and for quite a long time I was angry, and that's a process of healing. The anger is like a massively important process of healing. And then I don't know, it got to the stage where I realized that a lot of what had happened to me, yes, it was shit, but I've learnt so much, and I'm so strong, and I'm so resilient, and I'm so capable. And that's led me to the purpose of now helping people understand that they're the same. And for me, that's incredibly important. So as my journey's gone on, though, I'm noticing that I'm slowly morphing into a more spiritual side of it as well. So we've just set up like healing circles and stuff like that, like women's circles and stuff, which is really awesome. So I'm really looking forward to that. So we're starting that in September. So I'm really excited to see where that comes and what comes of it, to be honest. Because I also have a day job and I work with tradies. So I generally, in Australia, we just call it bogan. I speak tradie. So I'm like, fuck, shit, bastard, dirty jokes, that sort of stuff, and it draws men in, and then they tend to open up to me. So I do work secretly with a lot of men, but they generally don't like to openly acknowledge that they're doing the work. And this is another stereotype that I'm sort of looking at breaking down, because it's so important that not just women but men understand that they have so much value to give, and they've been neglected for so long. Just in so many, like, they've been painted in such a bad light and such a negative, dominant way. Like, they've just, I feel not, well, I guess I do feel sad, like empathetically sad for them, because I know what it's like to feel like you don't have a voice and you don't have anyone to advocate for you. And I know what it's like to tell someone, even as a small child, like to tell someone your truth, to say, hey, this is what's going on for me, and have them just shut you down and say, oh no, you're misreading the situation. This isn't what happened, because you're a kid. And back then they didn't believe kids when they told whatever was going on was going on. So it's really important that I sort of get that side of it out there as well, because men they don't get the voice that they deserve. It is starting to come up. Like, I've got coach friends that are specifically doing like men's groups and stuff like that, and they're doing some epic work. but it's really important, even as a female, to understand the value of men and their emotional range, and giving them, like, being able to hold space for them when they need it, because a lot of women, they can't hold space for themselves, so it's virtually impossible to expect them to be able to hold space for anybody else when they just don't have that skill set. And that's one of the things that I'm really sort of passionate about opening up in people, is just giving them the skill set to be able to hold space for themselves and those around them, because so life throws so much at us, and if you don't know how to deal with it, you're just going to keep sinking and suffocating, and that's just, it's not what we want at the end of the day. You know, you're here once, but you're here every day in that lifetime, if you know what I mean. So you want to really make sure that you're making the most of that. Equality, yes, but I think too, it's a case of, we can't, people are very detached from their humanity, and they're like that out of fear. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to advocate with some of the people that I work with, and with some of the things that I post, is that, you know, it's not just about reconnecting, like reconnecting with your emotional self to heal, but quite often, even in men, it's damage to their soul, because they've been repressed and suppressed from being able to express themselves. The same, like, it's happening to children as well still, because they've got parents that don't understand the importance of giving the children the space to be able to vocalize, okay, this is what's going on, and this is what's happening, and this is what I need from you, because people are scared to ask for what they need, because they feel like they're being demanded, or they're going to be painted as, you know, troublesome or bossy or a pain in the ass. And, like, I see it all the time at work. People go, oh, how do you always get this done? Or how do you always get that done? I'm like, because I tell them what I want. They're like, oh, I can't do that. I'm like, but why? If you need something done, you just say, this is where I'm at. This is where I need to be. I need you to do this so I can get there. And that's how life is. But we still aren't comfortable with that yet. And that's a huge problem. So it's not just about reconnecting and healing through emotions. It's also about reconnecting to our humanity, so we can heal the whole. So it's the mind, body, and the soul as a collective that we can heal. But yeah, no, it needs to be a case of being able to hold space equally for men and for women. So men are afraid to be able to put themselves out there and be vulnerable and support a woman in a way that she needs. And then the women feel unsupported, but they don't offer that to the men either. So it's a big circle. And it's just about breaking that stereotype, really, because it is such an important thing for people to understand. So I actually talked to quite a few friends, not just clients, but friends with this. I think it needs to go, this is just from my point in the world. Children need to be able to understand that they can express themselves safely, emotionally. And like my daughter, she's at that age where she has unexplainable rage, like the hormones are starting to change, and she gets angry and she doesn't understand why she's angry, and she'll start to sort of take it out on me, and I'll be like, hold on a second, you know, what's going on? Let's talk about this. Okay, tell me what you're feeling. Tell me what you're thinking. What are the stories you're telling yourself? Okay, I understand all of that, and it's natural to feel all those things. It's not okay to be rude to people when you feel that way, but it is normal to feel that way. And it's about having open conversations. You've got to be open to their communication. So if you're doing something they don't like, you've got to be open to hearing that. Because change is a two-way street. It's not, you can't create a generational ripple if you're stuck. You know what I mean? If you're a tree in the middle of a pond, the ripple's only going to go so far, and then it's not going to go anywhere else. It's going to end. And that's what it's about, stopping. It's about restarting that and teaching them. Like, I know some schools are even doing this, but it's about teaching them to understand healthy boundaries within themselves and their personal expression. So they need to know, okay, it's okay to feel this way, but it's not okay to treat people this way. It's okay to express my feelings in a safe manner to my parents, or to you know, my teacher or my best friend, and not have any repercussion from it. It's not a case of, oh, you know, I need to vent and tell you how I'm feeling, and then when you're angry with me, you turn around and throw that in my face, because that doesn't create a safe space. It's about being able to hold space for them. And also, like with my daughter, for example, when I'm feeling a certain way, I will often have a conversation with her about it. I'll be like, oh, I feel really irritable today, or I feel really irritated because of this. And she'll be like, oh, did I do anything? I'm like, no, you haven't done anything wrong. I just want to explain this to you so that you understand that even adults feel this way. Like, it's not a case of, or once you learn to understand it and you learn to manage your state, so to speak, that it stops. Like, your emotional state it's a lifelong thing. You just need to learn a little bit of emotional intelligence, it's generally called. So it's gauging situations and when to act and when not to act. And that's done by example. You can explain it to a child. It's like teaching them something. You can teach them, explain it to them, but until they physically see you doing it over and over and over again, they just don't pick it up. And that's basically what I've done with her. We've also got an emotional communication book sort of thing as well. So because quite often kids, they do, even adults do, like adults journal. Kids don't necessarily have that concept yet, but we've got a book. So when she's feeling angry, or say she's a bit pissed off with something that I've said or done, but she doesn't have the words to vocalize it to me internally, she can often write it down. So instead of her suppressing it and sort of compartmentalizing it, she's able to then put the words on paper and go, this is what I'm annoyed about. And everything in this book stays in the book, and it's just a communication tool for us, basically. So I can respond to it, or I can just sort of say to her, okay, do I need to respond to that, or did you just need to vent it out? And we can go from there. But the main thing is for young boys and young girls to realize that they've got a safe space to be able to say, I'm feeling this way and I don't know what it is, and it's making me feel sad, or it's making me feel angry. And for you to then be able to pick it up and say, well, you know what, that's really normal. Let's discuss this some more and let's see what we can make out of this. And then you can also teach them skills to manage that state. So like we use meditation, and we earth ourselves, and we use essential oils, and there's lots of different ways that you can, like, go for a run. We'll go to the park and she'll run it out. You know what I mean? Like, it's a case of showing them that there are healthy ways to express yourself, or healthy ways to manage a state. So a lot of people used to go to the pub. Oh, I've had a really shit day, I'm going to go to the pub. And that created a big generational issue right there. And I mean, in Australia, that's still the culture. Oh, this week was shit, let's go to the pub. And that's Australia in a nutshell. And I noticed that through certain groups now, they're starting to make a big change. There's a movement there, and it's fantastic to see, because now it's going to start setting examples for younger generations at home. And that's what we want.
Yeah.
And this is exactly it. This is actually something that I talk to a lot of people about, is just because that's how you view the world doesn't mean that anyone else's view of the world is wrong. Like, the way that our brains receive information, it's highly, highly unlikely that we're all going to receive the exact same amount of information on the exact same things. So, you can stand in a room and see, say it's a room full of colored dots, and you might only see red dots, but other people might only see green. Some might see rainbow dots, you know what I mean? So it's never a case of information and processing is always going to be the same. But that's also a problem, because people generally, they'll look at others and go, oh, how stupid do you have to be? How can you not understand that? But it's just not explained to them in a way that they understand for their processing. I don't know. I find it all absolutely fascinating, which is why I tend to educate myself on all sorts of things, brain related and behavior related and emotional health related, because it's absolutely fascinating how humans tick and what drives them. And I find the skills that I learn are phenomenal, because it makes other people's lives better, and that makes me incredibly happy. I know that's really selfish, but it really does.
No,
I'm really grateful. Like, I've always been quite strong-willed and very intuitive. So I've always had that voice in the back of my head going, just keep going, just keep going. You're almost at the end, just keep going. And I honestly don't think I would be here if I didn't have that voice.